The New Orleans Saints found a way to get Taysom Hill more involved against the Los Angeles Rams, and what do you know? It ended up with another W in the win column. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on this live postcast episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into a victory postcast here on the Locked On Saints podcast. We are live on YouTube and appreciate you as always for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, Locked On Saints is your go-to spot for your daily Monday through Friday content around the New Orleans Saints, covering your favorite team. As I mentioned, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. You can find me all the time as your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints, coming through with a turtleneck swag today. Thanks everybody for being here for another live episode of Locked On Saints. Once again, as always, we do these live postcasts, win or lose after every game, but it's nice to be here talking about this W here in the Caesars Superdome. Thank you, Andrew. I'm sure you're looking spiffy as well today. And a big thanks to everybody here in the chat. Frankie, I see you. Carla, I see you. Forever Trill, I see you. Mr. Jerry, I see you. Thank you all very much for being here. Don't forget to drop that your team every day in the chat. The New Orleans Saints get a much-needed victory against Los Angeles Rams. And let's be clear here, it's not time to start talking about, the Saints' postseason hopes are still alive and they still have some opportunity here within the division and all this other stuff. We're not going to go there with this team just yet, but I will tell you this much. This was an important win for the New Orleans Saints. And how did they get it done? They got it done by getting Taysom Hill in the game. Taysom Hill took 16 snaps at quarterback in this game, ran the ball 9 times in this one, team lead in terms of rushing yards with just over 50 rushing yards, also attempted 3 passes, completed 1, took a sack on another, and also had a catch for 8 yards and a first down. So when you look at the numbers aren't going to jump off the page at you and say that Taysom Hill dominated this game the way that he dominated against the Seattle Seahawks. However, what I will tell you is this. He did have an impact in this game. That type of sort of mix and match between he and Andy Dalton is something that really kept the Rams kind of on their heels throughout this game. There was one series to where he and Andy Dalton alternated snaps all throughout the series. Actually, it might have been 2 series in a row that they ended up doing that. So that was a really, really good sort of thing to learn about this team, is how your team responds to that, right? Because look, it's a different playbook when it's Taysom Hill in there, or it's a more expanded playbook when Taysom Hill's in there. It's a different look in terms of what you have with Andy Dalton. You're asking a different sort of play style from your offensive line, and right now the offensive line was down 3 starters, and they still paved the way here for Taysom Hill to have a nice game, right? It wasn't the big sort of rushing game that we're used to seeing from the New Orleans Saints, or that we've seen at certain points throughout this season from the offense, but still a good level of production. So the sort of mixing in of Taysom Hill had its positive impacts. It allowed sort of that offense to be able to take advantage of a defense that was kind of back on its heels a little bit. And then we saw the Saints capitalize on that, particularly in the third quarter with a red zone touchdown to Jarvis Landry, and then a big 53-yard touchdown to Chris Olave, both of which with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So having sort of both of those guys going back and forward kept Andy Dalton fresh, kept him from getting hit a ton in this one behind an injured offensive line, who, by the way, did a really, really good job, standards considered, right, up against Aaron Donald, who did not have a sack in this game. He did have 1 hit on the quarterback, which was actually the hit on Andy Dalton on the 53-yard touchdown down the middle to the NFL's best rookie wide receiver in Chris Olave, who did exactly what we talked about. He crossed the century mark in this game, didn't get the multiple touchdowns, but still got a touchdown. So watch for his name to kind of creep up those offensive rookie of the year boards after this game. But You look at all of that. You look at them getting Taysom Hill more involved. Oh, by the way, and Aaron Donald. Sorry, that's where I was. Aaron Donald had the one quarterback had 2 tackles for a loss. But outside of that, I mean, the Saints just ganged up on him and made sure that he wasn't able to have that big impact that we're used to seeing from Aaron Donald. So an Aaron Donald standard wasn't reached in this game. So Saints did a really phenomenal job here over on offense with what they had available to them. Now, you want to see them be a little bit more productive in the run game, especially when Taysom Hill is getting as many snaps as he did in this one. But all in all, the performance and the response from the Saints offense, I thought, was a positive one after scoring only 1 touchdown in each of the last 2 weeks. Now, it wasn't all positive, right, when it comes to this. Like we mentioned, the run game wasn't really there. The Saints averaged under 4 yards per carry in this one. They did not eclipse 100 yards. Taysom Hill had well over half of that rushing yardage. And you didn't really see, but you did see the Saints become a little bit more aggressive over on the offensive side. You saw them kind of call everything on their play sheet is one of the things that Taysom Hill spoke about, that at this point, what have you got to lose, right? So for the Saints, they kind of just saw this as an opportunity to go out there, call the plays that they wanted to call, get everything out there, and not hold back. And that worked out really well for them. And I thought that the Saints defense played pretty well in this one as well, allowed over 140 rushing yards to the NFL's worst rushing offense. Coming in, they averaged, the Rams, only 68.1 rushing yards per game, allowed over 140 did the New Orleans Saints. But we'll discuss kind of where that came from and how I still think that the Saints defensive performance was one that was formidable enough, and especially highlighting the performance of Kaden Elliss. But you want to talk about the impact players for the New Orleans Saints over on the offensive side. Taysom Hill absolutely leads off that list. Chris Olave, of course, leads off that list, is at the top of that list as well with 5 receptions for over 100 yards. Jarvis Landry, he had the 1 touchdown catch, but he also had, a nice catch up the seam route that got them there, or up the seam that got them there. And he also had a really energetic 8-yard reception at one point in the game, and it was just kind of that juice, no pun intended. Jarvis Landry's nickname is Juice. But it was kind of that juice that you've been looking for from the New Orleans Saints offense, so it was great to see that. And Juwan Johnson scores his 5th touchdown in 5 weeks, has a touchdown in each of the last 3 games, and in fact, actually, until the Jarvis Landry touchdown, scored 3 straight touchdowns for the New Orleans Saints, because he scored the only one against Baltimore, scored the only one against Pittsburgh, and then scored the first one here today against Los Angeles Rams. So what about the rest? What about the defensive side? What went well? And what is it about this performance that makes this, honestly, in my opinion, the best performance the New Orleans Saints have put together so far this season? We'll break it down as we continue on and wrap up this postcast episode of Locked On Saints. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Total Wines and More. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wines and More. With so many bottles to choose from, it's easy, honestly, to make sure that you're finding your favorite selection over at Total Wines and More. They're a go-to for me. There's one right over in Metairie, up in Metairie, and I go there. I get my Uncle Nearest from there, my favorite whiskey and my favorite bourbon. But you're going to be able to find everything that you're looking for, whether it be perfect gifts for those around you on your list, or even something you want to be a little nice to yourself. You're looking for a little something there, you can do that as well. And you're going to be able to do it with the confidence that you found something special at the lowest price. So love what you find and find what you love over at Total Wines and More. They've got curbside pickup available, as well as delivery in most areas. TotalWines.com is where you're going to go to learn more. Drink responsibly. Be 21. Today's episode is also brought to you by Turo. Turo is really cool. It's the world's largest car sharing marketplace. So when you think about kind of like the Airbnb of cars, right? Somebody owns a car, you want to try it out, they'll even drive it to you, deliver it to you, and then you've got it for as long as you rent it. And they have everything that you're looking for at the price points that you're looking for as well. So if you need a spacious SUV or a minivan to help with a family trip, or maybe you're looking for a luxury car for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to test drive a Tesla. One of the hosts over at Locked On Mavs, Isaac, actually did that not too long ago. He just wanted to drive a Tesla, so they rented a Tesla for one of their trips, and he got to try it out. So you can test drive all of it, and you can try it all out over at Turo. Many Turo hosts, as I mentioned, will even bring the car directly to you as well. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions do apply. Forget boring rental cars and drive at Turo.com. All right, y'all. Taking a look now at the defensive side for the New Orleans Saints in this matchup. The biggest story around this team, not named Taysom Hill, is probably Kaden Elliss. Kaden Elliss had yet another, for the second week in a row, just fantastic performance in this one. Loaded up the stat sheet, led the team in tackles with 10 combined, also had 1.5 sacks in this game, including a big one toward the end of the game. He added on top of that a pass breakup, a couple of tackles for a loss as well, maybe just one tackle for a loss. But just a fantastic game. And one of the things that we were looking at after he had such an impressive performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and this was like something that Ryan Nielsen brought up, as well as Dennis Allen brought up as well, that the kind of next piece for Kaden Elliss was, can he replicate that when opposing teams have the tape on him? Demario Davis, after the game, telling us that 5'5", as he called Kaden Elliss, who of course is number 55, was the best kept secret around the NFL. Now he's getting an opportunity to show the world what he could do, and left no question that no one within the Saints facility is surprised by what they're seeing from Kaden Elliss, but he might be surprising some other people out there. But Kaden Elliss wasn't the only standout. You had some really nice performances and nice moments from Alontae Taylor, who continues to impress. Paulson Adebo, I thought, had a really strong game in this one as well, including a huge stop on the first third down of the game, a big perimeter stop in run defense when the Rams tried to get a little tricksy and win toward the outside. I loved what it was that Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor did in this game. It wasn't all great. I mean, you saw the big 62-yard touchdown at Tutu Atwell, who just got matched up 4.39 speed on Chris Harris Jr., who's been in the league for a while. You're going to have a bad time if you're Chris Harris Jr. in that situation. But I thought that he also had some good plays as well. And it stunk to lose Peyton Turner in this game, especially when you were already down Cam Jordan. He missed his first game due to injury in his NFL career, over 164 games, I think it was, 160-plus games. And then you also didn't have Marcus Davenport for a second game in a row here. And so to lose Peyton Turner partway through, not great. Not great in terms of what you're looking for from your defensive line there. But I thought the Saints got good pressure. And one of the things that I really enjoyed that the Saints did was, with Matt Stafford having to leave the game, Bryce Perkins comes in. Bryce Perkins changes everything. The Saints were kind of prepared for this. They prepared for Bryce Perkins as a change of pace quarterback. They didn't expect to face him the entire second half. The first drive that Bryce Perkins was in, you saw the usual sort of Saints struggling against the mobile quarterback stuff. But then they tightened up. They only allowed 6 points in the second half. Didn't allow a touchdown in the second half after allowing some touchdowns earlier in the first half. So I thought that they rebounded really well. Also, like I said, it's not a perfect game for the New Orleans Saints. It might be their best game that they put together so far, though. I mean, the Raiders game felt a lot like the Raiders kind of beating themselves up a couple of times. This Rams game, you didn't really see the Rams get in their own way. The Saints just kind of had an answer at every time that they faced any type of animosity or any type of, when they faced those kind of bounce back moments. It seemed like they responded, which is something we didn't see against Las Vegas Raiders, because Raiders, they didn't do anything that required an answer or a bounce back, right? The Saints shut them out. But to me, I liked what the Saints put together in this game. And as I mentioned to open the show, it's not time here to start saying like, oh, well, the Saints beat a really beat up, banged up Los Angeles Rams team that's disappointing, that's 3-6 and all that. Like, it's not time to take that and say, okay, well, the Saints' hopes are alive for the playoffs all over again, and the Saints' hopes in the division are alive all over again. We have to keep this in perspective as we discuss it, and we look at it from the team's perspective. But if we remember back to last week following the Pittsburgh Steelers game, I mentioned speaking with Jarvis Landry, and Jarvis Landry kind of having the message for the team that, hey, we're not looking at the division anymore. You're not looking at the playoffs anymore. You're not looking at postseason life or anything like that. You're looking at the next game. Can you win the next game? Can you start to string together wins? This was the start, hopefully, for the Saints there. And if nothing else, it proved that they can be a fun team to watch, right? I mean, there's nothing worse than being a bad team and a boring team. And the Saints were on the cusp of that, if not realizing that over the course of the past 2 weeks. This was an entertaining team to watch. This was a fun game. And then they get a win out of it. They're 4-7. Again, you don't take that for much more than what it is. But the Saints getting a win here, depending upon what they do for the next couple of weeks, we might be looking back at this game and saying, okay, well, that set a tone. If nothing else, though, what you've seen now from Kaden Elliss, what you've seen now from Alontae Taylor, what you've seen now from Paulson Adebo, from Taysom Hill, from Chris Olave, from Juwan Johnson, Cesar Ruiz as well in this game, that gives you a lot of bright spots to look at and say, okay, there's a foundation here once Eric McCoy returns, once Pete Werner returns, once, They find out who Trevor Penning is with Ryan Ramczyk still in the building going into future seasons. So even if you're somebody that's kind of done with this season, this still gives you some good insight and honestly should give you a pretty positive outlook of what the team can be moving forward, whether you're talking about moving forward this season or moving forward into upcoming seasons. So not something you're going to start taking a victory lap about, but hey, a win's a win. And we will accept our Victory Mondays when we get our Victory Mondays here on Locked On Saints. I appreciate y'all very much for joining us for another live postcast. Don't forget, don't forget, coming up later on Monday, we'll have another full episode for you. We don't sleep here at Locked On Saints. So we'll get you all covered with everything else that you need to know, a little bit of a deeper dive. This was just kind of like a summary of the events and the feel around the team and what's going on. The Saints are playing Set It Off in the locker room after this win. Good stuff for the New Orleans Saints. But what does it mean? How do they build on it? What do they do next? All of those things. How did it happen? Why did it happen? We'll answer all of that going into the full Monday episode, which will be up later tonight, as well as like earlier into tomorrow morning as well. So I appreciate y'all, as always, for being here for another episode of Locked On Saints and for this live postcast. If you don't mind, I see 100+ people in the chat. Go ahead and hit that like button for me. Show some love. I really appreciate you. Don't miss tomorrow's episode. Don't miss the full week of episodes that we have coming up as well. Appreciate you, as always, making Locked On Saints a part of your day, a part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.